channel.
Gets to the edge. Sonny Michel will send the Dogs home to the championship game.
If you're looking for the latest Georgia Bulldog news in football, basketball, baseball, and recruiting, then you're in the right place.
Anthony Edwards with the jam. Are you kidding me?
Hosted by Dogs Daily writers Jeremiah Stoddard, Kyle Funderburk, and Jonathan Williams.
Here's a pitch. Hit high out into right center with some carry. It's got a chance. This ball is out of here. Tucker Bradley has won it.
Just sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for these hot takes you're about to listen to.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Classic City Sports. As always, Jeremiah Stoddard along with Jonathan Williams. Exciting episode for us this week. It is the day before the NFL draft tomorrow, where a lot of Georgia players are expected to go, and some very high in the draft, as early as potentially the number one overall pick. So we are excited to jump into all of that. So that'll be the main part of the episode. Then we'll always go into our King of the Hill segment, which is going to be a fun one, I think, tonight as well.
Always is.
I think it's a pretty straightforward answer as far as like what the answer is to the question, which we'll get to.
But we'll play around with it a little bit and see if we can change our answers possibly, and have some other ones that I'm going to ask you. That
I'm sure you do. You always have something up your sleeve, but
I got to keep you on your toes.
You know, always. But Jonathan, how are we feeling today? You know, it's been, to me, it's been a fun day. I've been as I said earlier, kayaking through Bama fans' tears all day long, as they've been in my mentions since like noon or something. But it's been fun. But anyways, how's your day going?
I had to not partake in the Twitter trolling or chaos or whatever, but it's finals week for me. So it's been pretty hellacious in the city of Athens, as you might say. Just grinding it out, trying to keep my head above water and whatever else. But tomorrow I'll get a break from all of that. It's an exciting day for UGA fans. It's by far, it'll be the best day one draft day for UGA fans since Kirby Smart arrived, and probably in school history. I mean, you have potentially 5 players that could be going in the first round, maybe even more than that. So a lot to look forward to tomorrow. And then there's a lot to watch also. You know, there's some people that are kind of on the fence about the first round, guys that may squeak in. There's been a lot of talk about that. So we'll bring all of that to you guys. We'll discuss it. We'll break it down as best as we can. We got a whole page of notes on everything that we can, everything that we thought would be relevant to the draft. So we came prepared, and we're ready to bring you guys this great content.
And shout out to my boy Jonathan on that, because he took some time during his busy schedule to compile.
Gotta keep it professional around here sometimes. Maybe not all the time, but
every once in a while
now and then we try to be at least.
Try to be prepared for it, right?
Yeah.
But he took some time to compile some things into a single document for us to kind of review as we give some information to you. So I appreciate the work that you have put in for it while you're in the middle of the finals, because I don't miss those days at all. Those are miserable, and I get it. But let's jump straight into it while we're here. We'll kind of do the position groups is what we'll go through. We'll start with the bigger position groups that we expect some high names in, at least, which first one, you got to start. It's D-line in general, right? And the first one's obviously got to be defensive end, edge rusher.
D-line's going to be gone day one, all of them. They're all going to be
all day one guys. All 3 of those guys are going day one.
Shout out to Trey Scott for that.
Unreal. Yeah. Unreal. What was the last guy to get drafted? Defensive lineman?
2013. I can't remember. I'm drawing a mind blank right now. I would know it off the top of my head usually, but they haven't had a defensive lineman drafted since 2013 ever, not in any of the rounds. So this year they're about to put 3 in the first round. So it's a historical night.
First round since Pollock, right?
Yeah, I'd have to do more digging on that. But yeah, that sounds.
If somebody's listening and wants to fact check me on that, I believe the last time it was a first rounder was David Pollock.
But it's not even just first rounders.
Just in general.
Off the bat, we'll go with Travon Walker, who right now has the best odds. This came out this week. They released the odds of who's going to be the number 1 pick, and Travon Walker currently has the best odds to be selected number 1 overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So
I haven't seen if it's adjusted from it, but I think it was like minus 180.
As far as I know, it still stands. He's still leading the pack right now. And so to go from not having any drafted over the last 8 years, and now you're about to have one drafted number 1 overall, it'll be the first one for Kirby Smart to have someone drafted number 1 overall, and the first one in school history since Matthew Stafford back in 2009, and the 5th one total in school history. But the other ones are like back in the 1940s, like
Long
Frank
time.
Sinkwich, Charlie
Yeah.
Trippy. Like you're going back that far for it.
Thank
okay,
you,
John
Evan.
Jenkins. I knew it started with a J, but I couldn't remember which one. I knew there was a couple of them.
That was the third round and back in 2013.
Shout out to our boy Evan for that one.
Appreciate you.
We always appreciate you guys bringing the facts to us so we can look better, but also just for you guys helping us out. We appreciate this as always.
Plus, we appreciate the engagement like that too. It's fun.
Oh yeah,
it makes
absolutely.
Conversations always fun. So while we're going through this, if you have any comments or anything like that, feel free to throw them in the comment section.
Drop them. We'll get
YouTube,
to them. We'll roll through them.
Facebook, wherever you're watching. If you're watching on Twitter and you try to make a comment on it, we won't see those. I don't know, unless we pull up Twitter on our phone or something, we won't be able to actually see those through our stream here. But if you are on Facebook or YouTube and you comment, we will be sure to, we'll at least read it. If it's some of y'all, some people in here, we can't read the comments out loud, but we'll at least see them. I'll say that. Yeah. But yeah, so you got Travon Walker, potentially going number 1 overall. Like you said, that is the first one going number 1 overall since 2009, and that was Matthew Stafford. And it would be the 5th in school history. That's a huge stat. And Kirby Smart's 6th year, or I guess 6th NFL draft, right? Yeah. And you can't, 2 years ago would have been his first full class, right? Or last year. Yes. Last year was his first full class. Yes. Last year was his first full draft class, and he had 9 players go. Overall,
something like that. Yes,
I think it was 9 overall, which broke a school record for drafted players. And now he's on the
he'll shatter it,
brinks of potentially having a number 1 overall pick, and then potentially breaking the school record for most first round draft picks, which I do believe if they get 4,
there will be a lot of history rewritten this weekend for sure for Georgia.
If Georgia gets 4 in the first round, I believe that is the school record for first round draft picks.
Back in 2018. When Sony Michel went in the first round, Isaiah Wynn went in the first round, and Roquan Smith. So you have those guys. And now you're about to have 4 this year, more than likely, maybe even 5. That's kind of the thing right now, is that you have 3 guaranteed ones right now.
I would put them as a lock.
Being Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis, and Travon Walker. Every time someone releases a mock draft, you have those 3 names in there every single time. Jordan Davis is in the mid-first round. Devontae Wyatt kind of creeps up into that top 10 range sometimes. But then for the most part, he's around that 13, 14, 15 range. Jordan Davis just kind of goes up and down. It kind of depends on the day, I guess. And then you get into the linebackers and whatnot, and that's kind of where you start to see if maybe a Quay Walker sneaks in there, and then if Nakobe Dean can get in the first round. If he can
hold on to that first round analysis, that projection.
It's been a rough stretch for him because, he started out as the highest rated draft prospect out of Georgia. He was the guy that was probably looking at being in the top 10. He was at 8 at one point.
It was. Yeah.
And now he's looking at a second-round projection just because of measurables. And I've said this so many times about Nakobe Dean, is that his measurables tell you he's a day 2 draft pick, but his tape, by God, tells you that he is a day 1 draft pick, and he's the best inside backer in this class. Hands down, I don't care what you say, that he is the best inside linebacker in this class. If you watch his tape, what he did against the best teams in the SEC, and just like his presence on the field. Anytime you want to think of the type of guy that Nakobe Dean is, you just have to go back to the play where he's yelling at, was it Channing Tindall? I believe it was Channing Tindall.
It was Channing Tindall. And the very next play when Channing Tindall gets a sack.
That's valuable. That's valuable to have leadership skills like that at inside linebacker. He's the general of the field. He commands it really well. And having those type of leaders commanding your defense is very, very important. And someone that is as cerebral as him, we're talking about a guy that majored in engineering and had almost a 4.0 GPA while doing so and being a D1 football player. Yeah, he took on a load at UGA and he managed it really, really well. So he's got big things planned for him. Whoever does, if they don't pick him up in the first round, there's going to be a lot of teams that will regret not picking
Steal for whoever gets him in the second round.
Absolutely, no doubt.
For sure. And real quick, before we go through the rest of this, I want to put this up for Evan. This is actually a really cool stat. If he does go, I guess number 1 overall, it'd be tied with USC, Oklahoma, and Notre Dame for the most number 1 overalls in FBS history. That's quite the stat right there. Yeah. Like that's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like for the school, that'd be crazy.
I would have lost that bet. I wouldn't have thought.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
I would have thought that there would have been a team out there with like 7 or something like that.
But let's look at like Travon Walker a little bit more in depth real quick on this as that potential number 1 overall pick, right? You're looking at a guy that going into, like you said, after the season ended, you were thinking Nakobe Dean was the first guy off the board. You had, and then the other guys right behind him and stuff. Mm-hmm. You might have had Travon Walker later in the first round, or maybe not even,
Yeah, he was the guy that was on the fence going into the offseason.
And then all of a sudden, what changed? What changed was, the NFL Combine, where he absolutely he led every category and every thing that he was doing.
He was the talk of the weekend after his performance.
For sure. He was. And I mean, after it was a 4.51 40-yard dash and a 35.5-inch vertical, 4.32 20-yard shuffle, and the 3-cone drill was 6.89. And that, I mean, he was just moving. He showed, and what we have learned, and this goes into the conversation about Nakobe Dean as well, is the NFL really does care about measurables and the things that they can't teach you, which is size, speed, athleticism, that kind of thing, right? And so when somebody goes into the combine and puts up those numbers as a defensive end, an edge rusher, like it's just jaw dropping, right? Well, and so instantly after that, you started seeing top 10 pick, then top 5 pick, now top overall pick. Like it's crazy.
I mean, just if you want to know here's proof that the NFL draft is based on measurables and like what your ceiling is going into the league. Here's Travon Walker's career totals, and it's nothing that's going to blow you away. 32 solo tackles, 61 total tackles, 13 tackles for loss, 9.5 sacks, 6 from last season.
I think that's the big thing that does help, though. The 6 in last season.
It's the fact that in his last year, he just boomed onto the scene. But, I mean, you read off that stat line, you're like, okay, that's a pretty solid football player. But you wouldn't see that and say, oh, yeah, that's the first overall pick in the draft. What's saying first overall pick in the draft is the fact that what he did at the combine and that he has a lot of room to grow. He is not a guy that is peaked and he's just kind of plateauing and he is what he is at this point. He's a guy that you will have to bring in a little bit and you can continue to develop him. He will become an even more dominant football player if he gets into the right system, if they know what to do with him and they know how to coach him. That's what makes him valuable for a number 1 overall pick, is because he's already really good. He's shown that last season at UGA, but he can be even better and be like a top defensive end in the National Football League.
Yeah, I was listening to ESPN, their pre-draft coverage stuff today before I came over here, and they were actually talking about, Walker versus Aiden Hutchinson, right? And they were talking about that, and they said Aiden Hutchinson has the higher floor.
Yes.
He has the higher floor, but Travon Walker has a much higher ceiling. And then I listened to guys like Dan Orlovsky, and I can't – I don't like him very much, but he's sitting here saying, that Travon he's not a proven player. He hasn't put stuff on. But like in the last season, talking about 6 sacks for him and the amount of production that he had in his last season, where that's where he's finally got significant playing time because of people in front of him. What people don't seem to understand is he's been behind a lot of big name players. And what gave him a big break is some of those players left, transferred, or, got suspended or left for the draft last year, all that kind of stuff, like different things like that. And all of a sudden he was able to come on the scene. Yeah, he doesn't have 3 years of production. He's not setting school records for sacks like Aiden Hutchinson did at Michigan, but the last year showed you that he is a proven player, that he was able to play at a high level. Like, I didn't understand that argument, in my opinion. It didn't make sense unless you just look at the career stats. But let's break it down to last season and show that he may not have even put up the exact same stats, but he also played in the SEC, played against different competition than the Big Ten does. And you saw what he was able to do against Michigan and how little Aiden Hutchinson was able to do against Georgia. And it's just, that was eye-opening. That alone should be something that shows him. When Aiden Hutchinson played against an SEC school, he got quiet. There was nothing there. That's the kind of stuff that they should be looking at, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, who rises in the big moments and who withers away? Because Jamari Sawyer is a very talented football player. Warren McClendon is as well. Jamari Sawyer is not a top-rated offensive lineman in this draft. I believe he's a 4th-round draft projection right now, and yet he handled what could possibly be a number 1 overall pick in Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo. David Ojabo couldn't even crack the box score, couldn't even get a single tackle against Georgia. So those kind of things do matter, in my opinion. In the biggest moment of your football career, what did you do for your team? And
against a 4th-round draft pick.
At the end of the day, they didn't show up. They did not show up. They did not play like what a number 1 overall pick would in that scenario as well.
So, but we've talked about Travon a good bit. Let's shift down the defensive line a little bit further, right? Let's go towards that middle spot. You got Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt there. We'll start with Davis. He's a guy that I think everyone knew was going to be a first round. He's one that like you had with Nakobe Dean was like, he's a first round draft pick, right? After the season, even mid-season, you're like, this guy's a first round draft pick. He's definitely solidified himself as a first round draft pick. Now, I will say he's kind of he showed off at the combine himself as well. absolutely showed off at the combine.
Jordan Davis could have gone to the combine, not even ran a 40-yard, not even done anything, just walk out there in his spandex and his tank top. And, I mean, you just look at him and say, like, yep, that's who I want in the draft. That's the number 1 overall pick. That's all I need to see. Enough said. Close the notebook, head back to town. I'll tell my GM everything I needed to know. Jordan Davis is really freaking huge. That's what I mean.
He's a big dude.
That's how unreal this guy is. In fact, in the notes, I put, that's a big MFer. I abbreviated MFer. I didn't actually write it out. But, yeah, that's literally what I put next to Jordan Davis's measurables. 6'6", 341, 34-inch arms, 10 3/4-inch hands. I mean, enough said right there. We don't even have to read down the list of anything else. That's just unreal.
No. I mean, it's just a guy at his size, even having a 32-inch vertical is quite terrifying. Like, I mean, that's like
that
this dude
should not move like that.
You're 340 pounds and you're out here with a 32-inch vertical.
Have you checked out his Twitter bio recently? I didn't know this, but in his Twitter bio, it says Swedish fish connoisseur. I don't know if this is stapled in your mind like it is mine, but I remember when he played Auburn and he's over there on the sideline munching down on Swedish fish. Just a legendary moment, in my opinion. That's like when I knew, like, yeah, that dude he is a dude out there. If you're just chilling on the sidelines and you're eating on Swedish fish,
it was funny because the staffer gave it to him. It was like after he made a huge play.
Oh, yeah.
He made a huge play, kind of sealed up the game for him. All of a sudden, he came to the side, and you see him all just kind of chilling up against, an equipment box. Just throwing
him over, big guy.
It was a cool thing to see as well. Yeah, but he's just a freak athlete. It's somebody, when you're out here running a 4.78 40-yard dash at 340 pounds, that's one of those measurables that they're going, all right, we can't teach that. Your film tells us that you're incredible, right? That's another thing that, like, when you go into the same type of argument I made with Travon Walker was, the stat sheet as a career thing may not blow you away. That's honestly the same kind of thing that you have with Jordan Davis. Like, because, he had 90 tackles, 11.5 tackles for loss, and 7 sacks in his career. And he played at Georgia for all 4 years. And he played he was a starter for a couple seasons there. But that's because he made plays in ways that didn't necessarily show up in the stat sheet. And that's where you get that. You have the evaluation point of you're watching film to just go, all right, this guy's a baller. He's just insane athletic abilities. He's a baller. Yeah, he doesn't get a bunch of plays, but when you watch them play and all of a sudden running back's trying to go through A gap, B gap, and all of a sudden they can't because he's got them absolutely locked down, not moving. They have to bounce outside. And then you have Lewis Seen coming downhill to make a tackle because they couldn't shoot the gap they wanted to go. That's the kind of stuff that doesn't show up in the stat sheet. But if you watch the tape on Jordan Davis, you saw it all the time.
Yeah, Jordan Davis has the most valuable trait for any athlete for the NFL draft, and it's called the beat by birth trait. I mean, it doesn't matter who he's going up against. Like, Jordan Davis may not be the most technically sound or whatever. If that's what your narrative is for him, that's fine. But he has the advantage every single down, no matter what, just because he's going to move you. He is massive. You are not moving him. He's going to absorb multiple blocks more than likely, and he's freeing up somebody else if he's not free. So, yeah. That's the biggest thing about Jordan Davis, and that's kind of what makes him such a fluctuating draft projection because it's all going to depend on what a team really wants in a defensive lineman, and that starts up the conversation as well for Devontae Wyatt. Do you want a Devontae Wyatt who is a three-down player, who is a three-down defensive lineman for your team, or do you want someone like Jordan Davis who's going to be on the field for 2 downs or so, or maybe he's not going to be in those third and longs or pass rushing downs, but he is going to help you out tremendously in the rushing game, and he's going to absorb a lot. He's going to take a lot of attention, and he's going to help your other guys out. So it just kind of depends. Do you want a Devontae Wyatt or do you want a Jordan Davis?
Well, but it kind of goes – you got to look at it in a few different ways. When you talk about him just being a 2-down player, you're looking at a guy that the impact that he has on those 2 downs is so significant that you can afford to have him come off the field for that 3rd down. Because of the impact that when all of a sudden they're sitting in a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, because they weren't able to do anything on 1st down or 2nd down because he was making a difference. That's what you have to consider. And then at that point, you have your DBs and linebackers and stuff that you're showing. All right, you may not have the pass rush from him, but you count on those guys to say, all right, it's 3rd and 7. Yeah. I need to stop. That's on y'all to get a stop. Yeah, we may not have him to get a pass rush, but he did his job already. It's time for somebody else to help us on that down at that point. So I think that's a big thing. And, he's a guy, Jordan Davis is a guy that he didn't need to come back for this last season, right?
No.
He absolutely didn't. He came back because he wanted to win a championship. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, he started the whole unfinished business thing. That was him. And that was him deciding to come back. A guy that I don't think he made any extra money by coming back, in my opinion. He was a first-round draft pick last year. He's a first-round draft pick this year. Now, to his side is a guy that made a ton of money this year in Devontae Wyatt, because Devontae Wyatt is a guy that nobody would have said was a first-round draft pick last year. You just wouldn't have called it.
He was always in the shadow of Jordan Davis. I mean, a lot of people probably didn't even know about Devontae Wyatt going into this season, because anytime you thought of UGA defensive lineman, it was Jordan Davis, Jordan Davis, Jordan Davis, and then it was, holy crap, this Devontae Wyatt guy's really freaking good too. Where has he been his whole career? It was one of those things this season.
Exactly. And this is a guy that, was this fifth year, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
He came back for a fifth year. I believe it was his fifth year. Y'all can correct us if I'm wrong. But I believe it was a fifth year. So he came back for that extra year and went from, being a mid-round pick, in my opinion, or somewhere like that, to now he's locked himself in as what we're saying is a guaranteed first-round pick in our opinions. Like, based on everything that we're seeing after the season, everything that he's done, he's looking like a lock for that first round all of a sudden. And just unreal amounts of money has been made by coming back this year. Got to win a championship, got to show off, on tape and everything like that to solidify himself as that first-round draft pick. And, he's looking at a guy going, mid-round to late round, potentially teams that are looking towards it. In our notes, we have just the Eagles and the Steelers as potential fits for him, or teams that have shown interest in the pre-draft process and everything. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. But you can't do anything but just be happy for him after that big of a jump year to year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. We're going to keep moving on because there's a lot of names on this list.
We spent a lot of time on the first guys.
We're going to try and get through all of them, but I'm going to touch on Quay Walker and Channing Tindall real quick, just because I think these are the two most intriguing prospects out of UGA, in my opinion, just because, one, I have written down for Channing Tindall is that, in my opinion, he's one of the biggest sleepers in this draft. He's not a name that's necessarily receiving a lot of early round buzz. I mean, he is still projected as a second or third round pick, but he's also a guy that I think whoever ends up with him, you're going to find out quickly is like, that was a really great pick at number 2. And it's a guy that's going to be in the league for quite a long time. We've seen what Georgia is able to do in developing their linebackers. Channing Tindall is going to be another example of that. And then with Quay Walker, of course, he's another just measurables guy. You look at his measurables, 6'4", 241 pounds, 32 5/8 inch arms, 9 1/4 inch hands. I mean, that's ridiculous. That is insane. So another guy that he's just long. He covers a lot of ground, and he's someone that you really could use in your linebacker room as well. So those are two guys that, one, Quay Walker has been named to be possibly in the first round.
Yeah.
He's someone that has kind of, like we said, he's kind of been on the fence.
He's one of the two guys that could sneak into that first round to make it up potentially 5 in the first round for Georgia.
Yeah, so those are two guys I'm really excited to see where they end up in the draft, just because I think they both have really high ceilings. And, you go back to that floor and ceiling type thing. I think those are two guys that definitely have really high ceilings and can be really, really good football players in the NFL. I mean, any linebacker coming out of Georgia, it seems like at this point, you're going to be playing a lot of football in the NFL. Just ask Tay Crowder. I mean, he was the last pick in the NFL draft, and he is pretty much an everyday player for the New York Giants right now and playing really good football as well. So,
yeah, absolutely. And Quay's a guy that, like, he came on late in his career at Georgia too. That's a consistent theme when you look at, linebackers with Georgia, because they usually have to sit a year or two behind some other players before they can even start, getting on the field much. But that doesn't change the fact that they are insanely talented football players. It's just the way that linebacker, Glenn Schumann, has absolutely had a crazy amount of talent go through that linebacker room at Georgia, and constant first round draft picks, early, day 2 draft picks, second round, that kind of thing. And Quay Walker is actually talked about as being a potential guy to go before Dean. After that conversation we just had about Nakobe Dean, is Quay Walker actually has a better chance to get drafted ahead of Nakobe Dean right now, just because of those measurables and things like that. He measures out better. He does have some pretty good film. He's just not quite, in my opinion, the same player that Dean is. I would take Dean ahead of him just because of the intangibles, right? Like the things like the mental stuff that you've seen from him, and all the extra stuff that Dean brings to the table, to me, is more valuable than a little bit more speed, or maybe a little bit longer of an arms reach kind of thing, all that. But at the same time, Quay Walker's a guy that is definitely going to make a splash, or I think he has a chance to make an early impact wherever he does go. That's something that I'm excited to see what he can do. Even though Mel Kiper came out and said that he would die on the Nakobe Dean hill, that he is the best linebacker to come out of this draft, he also went on to say in that same interview that, Quay Walker does have a better chance of going ahead of him.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll shift on down. We'll go offensive side here real quick. And it's another guy that could be second round, but he could also be a first round pick. And you guys are probably not surprised by this. It's George Pickens. George Pickens, I mean, the biggest thing for me about George Pickens, and I have this written down in the notes as well, and I typed it out, and I said, he has not peaked yet, and he will boom in the NFL. That's my biggest thing about George, is that while he did make great plays at Georgia, and he put up some solid numbers, he didn't hit that point in his career where it was just like, okay, he's at the top of his peak right now as far as a collegiate athlete. He just kind of coasted on through, partly because of injuries.
Man, it was McShay. We were talking about that before the show, and I was thinking it wasn't McShay, but it was. You're right. That's right. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. But so yeah, because he put up like 470 yards or something like that in his freshman year. And then the next year, he kind of struggled a little bit just because, you had Stetson Bennett. Stetson Bennett wasn't necessarily targeting all that much. And then all of a sudden, JT Daniels rolls around and he starts putting up those numbers that we were accustomed to seeing Pickens put up. And then last year, of course, he tore his ACL. So Pickens never had like this 800-yard receiving season or anything like that.
I think the most he ever had was 600 or something like that.
So maybe. You put him in an NFL offense that is going to target him, that is going to use him like a number one wide receiver should be. Not saying that Georgia used him incorrectly, but Georgia just also had a lot of people to throw the ball to and just a lot of different things going on. They weren't running, I would guess, what a normal NFL offense would look like. When you got your number one guy in the NFL, that's who you're throwing to 80% of the time or whatnot. So I think if he gets in that situation in the NFL and he goes to, like Lamar Jackson said this week, that he would love to have George Pickens in the NFL. If he gets that type of connection with someone like Lamar Jackson, it's going to be dangerous, and he's going to start peaking at the perfect time for him, at the start of his professional football career. So that's the biggest thing about Pickens. So the next question is he first round or is he second round? I don't know, but I think there's a good chance that, pick 27 or 32, George Pickens' name might be popping up on your TV tomorrow night.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the biggest thing is, he's only got 24 games played, right? I think that's the thing. In his total in 3 years, he's got 24 games played and 1,300 yards of total receiving production. And that's just because of those injuries and everything else, right? Like he's a guy that everyone would have assumed is a lock for a first round, but instead he got hurt and he hasn't played, in so long, and he didn't get to put up all those crazy numbers, because of that. He has shifted where now he's looking like a second round pick. But I mean, all of a sudden, like you said, maybe he does slip into the first round all of a sudden, and you're like, oh wow, there you go. And I don't think he would be a letdown for whoever did it. Like if somebody took that chance on him, they're going to, like you said, have that production as a potential number one wide receiver on their roster. And a good comment in there by Robert Pickens to Green Bay. Green Bay does need a good wide receiver.
So maybe with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, maybe you do get a late first round pick. I don't know exactly what number Green Bay has, but I know
in the later part of the round.
It's in the 20-something range. So maybe they do go, hey, he won't be on the board come our second pick in the second round, or our pick in the second round. He's
going to go early second round probably.
Exactly.
So that's the thing
that's where you could see a team technically reach for him because they want to get him, and a team like Green Bay is a great option for him because they did just lose, their number one wide receiver and Devontae Adams. So they're looking for somebody. That's a great point right there, Robert.
Plus, I mean, there's no more questions about him. The biggest question about Pickens was whether or not he kept his explosiveness after his ACL injury, and then he goes and posts a 4.47 in the 40-yard time. I mean, come on. What else do you need to see from George Pickens? With what little tape he has in college, there's a lot of flash plays in there, and it's a guy that is dominant at the point of the football. He knows how to track it, and he's just a special football player and someone that is going to make an NFL team very happy. But we're going to keep it on the offensive side for a couple more players. We're going to run through James Cook and Zamir White real quick. I mean, the thing about Zamir White and James Cook to me is that James Cook is more so your modern-day running back and how NFL offenses like to use him, just the way Todd Monken liked to use him at Georgia. You use him in the passing game, you use him in the running game, and he really surged onto the scene and proved himself in the running game during his last season at Georgia. He made a lot of money for himself this year as well, just because there was a lot of questions about him being able to run through the tackles and just running in general. He'd get those shoelace tackles, just fall as soon as first contact, but he did not show that this year. And so he goes on and posts in 46 game plays, 230 attempts on the ground, 1,503 rushing yards, 728 just last season, on 6.5 average yards per carry, 20 total touchdowns, and 730 receiving yards in the air. He made numerous big plays in the air. Todd Monken knew how to use him, and I think if another team can apply that and use him in the same way in their schematic and their offensive scheme, I think he'll fit in perfectly with whoever picks him up, and I think he's going to do really well in the NFL. And again, Georgia keeps their running backs fresh, so they're not guys that are going to wither away within the first 6 or 7 seasons. He's a guy that I think will be around for a long time, and he can just be utilized in so many different ways. It makes him super valuable.
He's just so versatile, and that's one of those things where somebody else pointed this out on, I can't remember what the topic was, but they're like 53 guys on your roster, right? You're looking for somebody that is, you want versatile guys to be in that count, right? And so he's a guy that he's proven that he makes so many plays in the passing game, makes some great plays in the running game to go along with it. And it's a guy that you could come out there and have as a 3-down back, because you can get it to him on 3rd down in a passing situation.
He's a guy that keeps the defenses on their toes. You don't know what they're going to do when he's in the backfield.
Exactly. You really don't. And it's kind of a different thing with Zamir White, is he hasn't been known as a guy to be a catch out of the backfield kind of guy. He's been known as a power back at Georgia. He's kind of just kept his head down and just driven through the line kind of thing, just run through players. Actually, I think he's one of the more disrespected players on Georgia's roster overall with what he's done in his career. I know everyone kind of expected him to be this huge, show kind of thing. He wasn't the guy that was out there just making these massive flashy plays. He was a guy that came out there and just kind of slowly grinded away at a team. And all of a sudden, not this season that just ended, but the season before, he was, creeping in on 1,000-yard rushing season in the shortened season for COVID. He was 800 and something yards rushing, I believe, in that season, and some production in the passing game as well. But yet people don't realize that, because he wasn't the flashy player. He was one of those, he'll get 10 yards a carry or 10 carries a game and still end up, creeping away at that 70-yard game or something like that.
He's a very quiet runner. He picks up when he gets the ball, he picks up maybe 4, then maybe 6, then maybe 3. And it just keeps piling up very quietly. And then when the game's over and you look at the box score and it says Zamir White, 14 carries, 98 yards, and 2 touchdowns, you're like, what the heck? It sure didn't seem like Zamir White had that type of day. Whereas a guy like James Cook, he has that one big run against Michigan or Alabama, and he breaks one loose for 70 yards.
Yeah.
He's not that type of guy. Well, he can be that, and but that's just not his type of style. That's not his game. But he still has value in the NFL for those type of guys. A good 3rd down back, goal line situation. There's a lot of money to be made being that type of guy, but he's also still very versatile. He's not this one-dimensional type of football player. He's a really good running back. He started out at like a 5th-round projection, but he's creeped his way up to a 3rd-round projection. So both of those guys are going to be going within the first 2 days.
And what does that kind of jump for you? Well, a guy that's usually known as a power back coming out of the NFL Combine and running a 4.4 flat. I mean, that's a guy that I wouldn't have been shocked if he ran a 4.6 flat. Personally, just because of what we saw at Georgia, he was, once again, it just sneaks up on you. He's a guy that he's a downhill runner, just running over people. He's not known for his speed at Georgia. Yeah, he's had some breakaway runs, some 60, 70-yard runs at times, but he's never been known as that extra getaway speed kind of thing, just leaving people in the dust.
No.
Then he comes out there and runs a 4.4
faster
flat.
than James Cook. Another bet I would have lost. Never would have thought that.
James Cook is known more as that speed guy. He has been, because of the roles they played at Georgia. But all of a sudden, you've got him coming out here running a 4.4 flat. That is a big reason you see a guy go from 5th round to 3rd round when a guy has had 2 ACL tears and he's still running a 4.4 flat. That's one of those things that the combine makes you some money there.
Yeah, I mean, just think about everything that Zamir White has been through in his life, from the time that he was born, overcoming those medical issues that he had as a baby, to having to deal with 2 ACL tears, 1 in each knee, going through that grind at UGA, to now being a probable 3rd-round pick in the NFL draft. The dude is not a quitter. He grinds it out. He keeps his head down. He's dedicated to his grind as well. And there's a lot of value to be had in that in the NFL. Guys that are just going to give you all that they have every single time. That'll play every Sunday in the NFL. And so Zamir White will have a great career as well, I think. Now, this one, I'm really intrigued, because I really don't know what to think about him. And it's Lewis Cine, because Lewis Cine while he's a great safety, and he's gotten a lot of buzz around being one of the top-rated safeties in the NFL for this draft class, but you really haven't heard like, okay, yeah, I think he's going in the first round. There's been talk about he could be a first-round pick. He could be a second-round pick. He could fall to the third round. But I think the biggest thing about Cine and where his value is as a professional football player is that he has a violent presence on the football field, and I think that's something that every football team needs is you got to have that dude on your defense, whether it be a linebacker or it be a defensive end or a safety that you always got to keep your head on a swivel looking for. It's Lewis Cine in this instance, because if you're not careful and you're coming across the middle, he will literally end your football career without hesitating.
He dang near did take Kyle Pitts' head off at one point.
He doesn't care about his life. He doesn't care about your life. That's just kind of how he plays. He's balls to the wall, 100 miles per hour all the time. He's not afraid to come downhill and stuff a running back in the backfield. He'll do it all. He'll help you out in the passing game. He just has a wide presence on the football field, and it's a violent one, and it's got guys second-guessing themselves coming across the middle. And you got to be alert where Lewis Cine is on the football field, and I think and plus him running a 4.37 40-yard time. I mean, come on.
See, all right, so going back a little bit, Richard LeCounte was a guy that, he used to make a lot of plays in the run game as a safety due to instinctual, abilities and just reading everything and just getting downhill because he just saw it, like he could read it. Every once in a while he would get burned because of that, but most of the time he didn't, and most of the time he was making the correct reads and he would get downhill. Lewis Cine is also making a ton of plays in the run game for a different reason. Like you said, he's out here running a 4.37 in the 40-yard dash. He's got that speed. He may not have had that same just mental click to just play recognition as much as, Richard LeCounte did. But he has that speed and that explosiveness to all of a sudden just a blink of an eye, and he's 15 yards back, and all of a sudden he's making a tackle at the line of scrimmage, and it's like, Jesus, man, what do you
think back to that play against Michigan every single time where he's just coming across the field and he meets the guy right at the line of scrimmage. I mean, he's coming from the opposite end of the field, sees the play develop right off the bat, and then comes across the field and stuffs him for I believe it was a tackle for loss, and ends up no, he wasn't a defensive player of the game because Darian Kendrick was that game for having multiple, or was it Lewis Cine? I can't remember which one it was.
For what exactly? Say it again.
The defensive player of the game for the Orange Bowl. I want to say it was Lewis Cine, but it may have been Darian Kendrick.
It was Kendrick because he had two interceptions.
Yeah, that's right. So Lewis Cine is just one of those dudes, man. He is. I don't know exactly where he'll end up in the draft, but he'll make someone happy. And I think he'll be a guy that I don't know how teams will want to use him in the NFL, just because I wouldn't say he's the best in pass coverage, but man, I mean, he's not afraid to put a body on someone.
He's pretty good in pass coverage, but I think of him as a guy that's like, what's his name? Jamal Adams. Think about like Jamal Adams when he played with the Seahawks and everything like that. He is not known for like insane pass coverage ability. He is known as that downhill
just a different
safety
player
that just comes down. It almost like a star type guy in Georgia's system, where he's playing the run a lot and he's kind of playing in the box, that like a bigger guy. Because you're right, Lewis Cine isn't a guy that has made a bunch of noise in the coverage side. He's only got 2 career interceptions.
There's also just so many guys to talk about from Georgia.
That's true. But that's that would be my comparison, is like what style. I'm not saying he's like the same player, but I'm saying as far as the style goes, I could see him playing the same type of defense and find a place that would use him the way that Seattle used to use Jamal Adams. I think that's the kind of comparison that I would draw.
Yeah.
But like you said, though, the other guy that did have 2 interceptions not in his career, but 2 interceptions in the Orange Bowl was Darian Kendrick. And that was a guy that I don't think anyone was really surprised to see, him come on and make a splash at Georgia so early on. Yeah. I think that's something that everybody kind of expected, if you would say.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was a huge difference maker for Georgia this season. Who knows where Georgia is? Who knows what happens to Georgia this past season if they don't go out and get Darian Kendrick? Because you're having Keely Ringo and maybe Amir Speed, and I don't know how that secondary looks if Darian Kendrick isn't there. He's not the highest-rated NFL prospect, and there's for good reasons. I mean, he's not a bad football player, but he's also just not like – he doesn't necessarily stand out in regards to what you're looking for a cornerback at the professional level. He doesn't have insane speed. He kind of does struggle keeping up with guys in the open field, and he gets burned quite a bit. And he's not the most physical, but what he is he's very cerebral and instinctual for a cornerback. And having a guy like that, he'll more than likely, he may not be your everyday starter or whatnot, but he'll be a guy that holds a roster spot more than likely, I would imagine, just because he's a good depth piece to have. If someone goes down with injury, he's a safe bet to go plug in, and he probably won't mess anything up for you. So he's currently projected as a 5th or 6th round pick. But I mean,
that sounds about right to me.
Yeah, definitely. He didn't participate in any of the events probably because he didn't want to go out there and put up 4.7 or something.
Makes
like
you
that.
wonder. I think the same thing we did see from like Nakobe Dean.
It'll only probably hurt you.
I think it's the same kind of thing that we saw from Nakobe Dean, where it was like you don't want to go out there and because he didn't participate and stuff. But I think he was kind of dealing with a nagging injury. Talking about Dean there, which also would have impacted his ability to put up that production at the combine. Yeah, so when you see a guy not participate in the stuff when they're invited to the NFL combine, it kind of, in my opinion, most of the time I'm going, that makes you wonder
up a little
about
bit
those.
of a red flag.
Makes you wonder about the numbers that they would have put up. It's a question mark, is what you'll say. I think that's how I kind of take it is let's not go out there and push myself from a 5th, 6th round to maybe 7th or undrafted kind of thing.
Yeah. We'll quickly go through Jamari Sawyer and Justin Schaefer. Really not a whole lot to dive into for these guys. But I will say this for Jamari Sawyer, his most valuable asset is the fact that he can play any position on the offensive line.
He has played every position.
I mean, he got plugged into right guard in the national championship game. He played left tackle pretty much the whole season. He's played center as well.
He started games at center.
So Jamari Sawyer, I think, is that guy where anytime anybody's injured, that's where he's plugged in at for the team that drafts him, just because he's very technically, he just knows how. He's very smart. He knows how to play the position, and he's going to do a solid job at it. He's maybe not going to do an elite job at it, but he's going to get the job done 99% of the time for you. And then
he'll go out there and shut down a potential number 1 overall draft pick.
Yeah, it's just consistent, and that's a big thing for offensive linemen. So consistency to have someone that's very consistent on the offensive line is a huge deal. That's what Jamari Sawyer brings. And then for Justin Schaefer, kind of a very unique prospect, I guess, for offensive line. He's violent. He moves people. He loves to hit people. He's very physical. He finishes really strong, and he's really good in the run game. Not so much in the passing game. So maybe you can use him in some rundown packages, like when it's like 3rd and 1, 3rd and inches, 4th and inches, goal line stuff. Maybe you see him get plugged into there. But he's a violent, physical dude, and that's what people like in their offensive linemen is people who will do the dirty work, and they aren't afraid to do it. And that's exactly who Justin Schaefer is. But I mean, that's our draft recap. We tried to go through it really fast. I felt like we zoomed through it. We talked about every single player.
We had to zoom through it for sure. We definitely spent a good bit of time on guys that I feel deserved it.
Absolutely. All these guys deserve.
They all deserve a lot of conversation.
We didn't give any love to John Fitzpatrick or Jake Carmada just because. I mean, Jake Carmada did run a pretty impressive 40-yard for a punter.
He did.
Kudos to you, brother.
It's true.
Maybe he gets drafted in the 7th round. I don't know. That'd be pretty remarkable. Add to the tally for UGA come this weekend for the NFL draft. And then John Fitzpatrick, I mean, he's a blocker on tight end, but there is value for that in the NFL. So
I think John's the guy that he'll hold. I think I wouldn't be surprised to see him hold a roster spot somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't see him getting drafted, but I could see him holding a roster spot, or worst case for him, I think
Charlie Warner at the 49ers right now. That's exactly what.
Very good comparison.
It's that type of thing where he's holding a roster spot. He may not be piling up the fantasy points for you.
I got you, Evan. I'm putting it on. Ready? There you go.
Carmada will be drafted. Our man Evan Sanders. You heard it here first. Colonel Sanders, whatever you want to call him. You heard it here first. He said he's getting drafted.
He's getting drafted.
That would be really impressive for that to happen. If someone wants to take a shot on a punter.
Every once in a while you see him use a pick on a guy like that. You never know.
I mean, it could be the Buccaneers in the 2nd round drafting a kicker like they did a couple years ago. Who knows? Sometimes you get some asinine
You think they'll
picks.
ever do that again?
I pray.
As
a Falcons fan, I pray they do. Draft a kicker every year with the number 2 pick. And get Tom Brady the heck out of there. Lord, I hope that man's retired soon. But that's going to wrap it up for draft discussion because we got to get into King of the Hill real quick. We got to run through it. We spent quite a bit of time on the NFL draft preview. So today's question for King of the Hill, I posed it to you. I put it on Twitter. We had a bunch of different responses, and it was, if you had 100 at-bats at the major league level, do you think you could get a hit? Brooks Austin says that he's going Oppo Taco within the first 20 at-bats, and he's moonshotting that bad boy 20 rows deep.
20 rows the chop house. Yeah.
And he's pimping that bad boy.
Oh, too. You know he would. Yeah, I mean, I would too if I took one. 100 at bats.
I'd be scared to hear what I would say if I did something like that.
I would lose my mind.
But do you think you could get the job done in 100 at bats at the MLB level?
100 at bats at the MLB level. I mean, just no.
Yeah.
I mean, I played baseball. I played in high school and stuff, but the most that I would face was like somebody throwing 85, that kind of thing is what I saw with a decent curveball and stuff like that. And
I could change up for most guys.
But when you've got guys at this point throwing 95 to 100 or 100 plus in some of these guys, right? And I think you posed the question as a guy throwing about 95.
We said your average speeds,
guy.
Like your 95 fastball, probably got a high 80s changeup with a slider hovering around 90 miles per hour, maybe, and a curveball hovering around maybe 78.
And I could hit off a guy throwing like 85 in high school, but they also didn't have insane off-speed stuff to like throw me off. Like I could kind of sit on that fastball a little bit more and no, but like in the MLB, all they would have to do is be like, all right, there's a 0% chance that this guy hits my curveball. I'll throw him 3 straight curveballs and he's going to be out. So like to sit here and say that you could get a hit off of somebody, that's like those, what was it? There's a stat out there. It's like a certain percentage of men believe that they could win a match against like Serena Williams or something like that. It's like the same kind of conversation. No, you couldn't. Like unless you have at least like collegiate experience, like a upper level collegiate experience kind of thing, your odds of getting a hit against a MLB pitcher in 100 at bats, no matter if it's the same pitcher all 100 times or if it's 100 different pitchers.
Think of it this way: a good day for an MLB player is 25 out of 100. That's a good day at work for an MLB player.
Or your top of the level players out here hitting 30 out of 100, right?
That's the 1% of the world's population. Yeah. That's a good day at the office. If you're getting 25 out of 100, if you're hitting the ball 25 out of 100 times, that is good. That is a good number. There is no chance that I am going up there and getting one hit out of 100 if 25.
Man, I'd be happy to foul one off.
Yeah, that's what I said today. I was like, I'd be happy to just get a little dink off the bat, dribble it out into the dugout. I'd take my
bat flip that. I'm done.
It's like that scene in Benchwarmers where it's like, I tipped it. Like that's what I would be like. I tipped it. Let's go. Because I picture it as, which this is the most extreme situation, but like if I have Jacob deGrom on the mound who throws 100 mile per hour sinker, 100 mile per hour fastball, slider, whatever else, I'm peeing in my pants literally because
it's gonna be terrifying.
Literally terrifying.
Like it's gonna be something that just you want. Dean, you really thought I was gonna come on here and say I could get a hit? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, I told him that you said you'd go yard. Is what you?
That
told
was a
me.
joke.
That's what you texted
obviously,
me. So
I said 450 dead center or something like that. Whatever it was, I don't know. But that was obviously a joke.
You need to go after Brooks, Dean, I guess, because Brooks said he's going Oppo Taco. So that's who you need to be gunning after. But so I said I'm going to throw a few other curveballs at you, ones that I did not pose to you. But all right, one NBA game, can you score a point?
I think my odds are a lot better to do that than they are to listen to why. Like I'll give you a reason for why, because I'm probably going to get out there and get fouled, and then I'll get a free throw.
Possibly, yeah.
Like the only reason I say I think I might be able to get one is because
get the ball first, though.
If somebody just gives me the ball, like if somebody passes me the ball, I could draw a foul. That's your best, but probably like odds are no, probably not. But I have a lot better of a chance just because I could get fouled and get a free throw, and I feel confident in shooting free throws.
My stipulation for this one is like they got to be giving me the ball on a consistent rate, but like
they're giving you the ball to have a chance.
If that's the case where like I'm getting the ball at a consistent rate and I'm getting my chances, and I think I score at least 1 point in an NBA game.
I think you would have a better chance because I've seen you shoot and stuff. You have a good shot, so if you had an open shot, you have a chance of making it
at least.
You do have a chance.
I would do whatever I can to get my 1 point in the NBA. But all right. So the next one I'd ask is: you get 10 tries. Can you gain 1 yard in the NFL game running the ball as a running back? You're the running back for an NFL team. You get 10 carries. Can you gain 1 yard?
Can I gain 1 yard?
1 yard.
If my offensive line's good, because I'd say because like if I have enough speed to just go the 3 yards and my line can hold up, like. If my line can hold up. If they're letting somebody in the backfield, no.
If my neck doesn't get snapped in half before I get to my 10 carries, I think I could at least scratch across 1 yard.
I'm just head down behind whoever my best blocker is.
If you got the Falcons O-line in front of me, I'm not even showing up for that
I'm losing.
I choose life.
50 yards in those 10 carries. Like I'm getting hit as soon as the ball gets in my hand kind of thing, and I'm not making anybody miss.
Oh, yeah.
I'd say that, 1 yard if they're going to have a good line in front of me. Like, I'm talking like the best offensive line in the NFL. I'm not talking just like an average offensive line. Like, I'm saying like the best is what it would take. But I'd say your odds are better than getting a hit against somebody in 100 at bats.
MLB's got to be one of the hardest, but I think the next hardest, or maybe even harder possibly, is you brought up Serena Williams.
Yeah.
So could you return a serve off of Serena Williams? Guys,
No.
we're talking about their
No.
serves come at 120 miles per hour at some points.
How many attempts do I get?
Oh, gosh.
Because that's an important question that at some point I might be able to barely get it might get
but it's
lucky.
got to go in,
right?
too. Like, you can't just hit
No,
it.
I know. But I'm saying, like, I might get lucky in that, like, be able to, like, get one to go up, like, kind of thing. But I would never be able to score a point. I would never be able to, like, the odds of me, it depends on the number of attempts. If it's like 10 attempts, I'm not even touching one of them.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not. If you give me 100 attempts, I might get one returned, and it may or may not land in. It could just be, if I get a racket on one, it'll just go some random place.
If I did somehow make contact with one of her serves, it's going out of the stadium because I'm like swinging as hard as I can, and I'm sending that thing out into the sky, and it's never to be found again.
That's probably that's the. I'd say no. I wouldn't return one, even if it was 100. I'd probably just get the racket on one, and it would just. And the only reason you get a racket on one is because you know the area they're sitting here they have to drive it to, so you just kind of get there and just stick it out, and it just. But like you said, at the speed that they're going, I've tried to play tennis before. Tennis is like surprisingly difficult to return a normal person's serve.
Yeah.
Like, like you said, 120 miles an hour. I just laugh at there are, I think I want to say it was somewhere like 25% of guys that were asked, like, said they thought they would be able to, like, score a point.
Those 25% of guys would also get beat up in a fight by Serena Williams.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think people understand how big that woman is.
How strong.
Good
like,
Lord.
just.
She is a very sturdy woman and would, in my soul, any day of the week, just knock me out. One punch, that's all it would take. But there you have it. Me and Jeremiah.
Could I beat? Here you go.
No.
The answer to this is
not
also
happening.
no.
Not happening. Like, no, there's no
I
chance.
would be able to return one. I might score a point. Like, I might score a point and return one because
ping pong.
I can
my
reach
best shot at any of those. It's ping pong.
I can reach left or right, kind of thing, in like the length of the table to get a return. Yeah. But would I beat her? No, not even possible.
So there you have it. Me and Jeremiah, not cut out for professional sports.
There's a reason we're sitting here.
Yeah, there's a reason we're the ones talking about guys that are going to be drafted instead of our names being in the NFL draft.
Good for you, dude. I'm proud of you.
Our physique and whatnot couldn't tell you already.
We're swole.
We just told you that, we're not cut out for professional sports. We're not even cut out for college sports. So, but we did display a lot of humility. We didn't come in here and say that, definitely getting a hit within the first 50 at bats, whatever.
Hey, I had a chance at like a D50, we'll just exaggerate, D50 school in baseball. That was my chance. I don't know. Hey, I stand by this though.
Give Jeremiah a clap.
For real. Had a chance there.
Give him his support.
But anyways, I stand by this. I stand by this. If Georgia ever holds open tryouts for basketball, you're going for basketball. Because I think you had a chance of being, somebody that just rides the bench. I think that would be kind of cool.
I fill up those water bottles pretty well. So, Mike White, if you're looking for someone, I could be your guy to be doing that. But anyways, if you guys are not following us on Twitter and all that, you guys know we got to plug everything for you guys. Like the video as well. I see a bunch of you guys in the comments. If you haven't already, please like the video. Subscribe if you are not already. Helps us out tremendously. Really does. Helps us grow. That's what we're trying to do. And we appreciate you guys for being in here. Love the activity that we saw today. It was really interactive. We had a lot of fun reading it.
Absolutely.
But we got the @ down below. I'm not used to this. Right there below me. Dogs Daily POD at twitter.com. Go follow us there. We always post our King of the Hill questions on there, so you guys can go on there, comment, interact, and stuff. We got a Facebook page as well. Just look up Classic City Sports Podcast. You can find us there. And that's all I got for the plugs. And Jeremiah, you can head us on out.
As always, keep it classy in the Classic City. We will catch you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Dogs Daily on Sports Illustrated. Take a second to subscribe, rate, review, and share with your friends and family. Feel free to reach out to the Dogs Daily crew on Twitter with any topics you'd like discussed. You can reach out to Jeremiah at Jeremiah_Stod7. to Kyle at DK Fubderberg and Jonathan at 22_J-Man. Check back next week for a brand new episode. In the meantime, go Dogs!